All right, we're live. Another Purpose Maker podcast here. I've got my guest, John. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of passion, a lot of fun. So, John, I'm happy to have you here. Thank you.
And I'm glad to be here with the Purpose Maker, Michael Wegmann, in the studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One of the ways I like to start these out is a little history. And tell me a little bit about you, your upbringing. If somebody's listening, I can definitely tell you have a little bit of an accent, which is wonderful to hear. So tell me where you grew up, and let's start with that.
One thing I'd like to say is that there's nothing more important than your health, which is something my mother constantly reminded me and has served as a guide throughout my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm here with the Purpose Maker podcast and your wonderful host, Michael Wegmann. I met Michael after injuring my back. And after I'd experienced years of pain, as I'm sure many of you listening out there can relate to, Michael's chiropractic care helped me to return to a full, normal life. And that is priceless. My admiration for Michael only grew after learning of his devotion to his patients' needs. Through his knowledge, practice, and seminars, and the podcast, as you're now hearing, and now a book is surely in the making. Any news on that, Michael?
14 chapters done.
Wow.
So I've been writing a lot. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I let a couple of people read some of my beginning manuscripts, and the feedback's been wonderful. So now it's just a matter of putting pen to paper, finishing it, and then figuring out the publishing process.
That is totally amazing, Michael. You never cease to amaze me. We both share a passion for sport, and soccer is where basically our worlds collide. Mm-hmm. Being a Manchester City supporter and not winning anything for over 3 decades, and I'm sure a lot of sports people out there can relate also to that. I've been living the dream for the past 12 years.
That sounds like our Detroit Lions fans. 3 decades and no winning.
Yeah. Now I've seen them for the past 12 years win basically everything there is to win out there. So, sweet. I grew up in England during the Industrial Revolution, and I suppose one of the stories I can tell you is that very early on, I refused to go to school unless my mother went down to the local paper shop and bought me a comic. And she probably thought that was strange at the time, but anyway, anything to get me to school. So she'd come in the bedroom, throw a comic at me, and I used to read all of them, the Dandy, the Beezer, Lion, you name it. I read them. That soon paid dividends, as she soon realized that reading comics fast-tracked my reading skills and helped me also develop a sense of humor. And when I did start school, which was I think around about 3, I was ahead of everyone because I could already read. Mm-hmm. So if you were, I was at least one class or year ahead.
From your interest in comics,
just from reading comics, isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anyway, I later what I did notice, which is a disability that I had that I didn't realize at that time, was that I froze during examinations.
Mm.
I would be top of the class in English, history, etc. And yet, if I sat down and was put under pressure to write anything, I just froze. Now, in England, at 11 years old, that's not a good thing.
So what town did you grow up in?
I grew up in Accrington, which is famous for not only bricks. We had three. You've got to realize this. I'm surrounded by mills and brickworks and kilns, chimneys, and on a bad day you couldn't even see the other side of town
because all the
smoke.
Yeah.
And one of the funny stories, one of the brickworks was called Iron Brickworks, and they made bricks like iron, not made of iron, but they were the hardest bricks in the world, the strongest bricks in the world. Someone from America, well, before I get to that, they got the painter to come and paint the kiln, and they wanted iron bricks on the kiln. So they put the scaffolding up, put the painter up on a hoist, and he started painting, but he painted from the bottom of the kiln, of the chimney, and it spelled iron, but going upwards.
The wrong way.
So when you looked at it on the skyline, it said Nori. And anyway, someone from America must have asked, could they produce these bricks? Because they wanted to bring them over to America. And they did that, and they built with these bricks the foundation of the Empire State Building, the highest building in the world. So that's one thing Accrington's famous for. And any of you who are still alive and old enough to remember them, we also were famous for the carpet sweepers, the U-Bank, EWBANK, and they were the carpet sweepers that were there before electric sweepers, and like Dyson, etc. And you just basically pushed it backward and forward, and it had a bristle brush on the bottom that just scraped it into a pan on the inside, and you just emptied them. Sure. And anyway, have a word with your grandmother or grandfather, and they will know them all too well. Anyway, that's where I grew up. And
so what was your childhood like? Did you play a lot of sports? Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I played all. Around the industry, we had beautiful hills and sort of lakes. And so we were constant fishers. We didn't hunt like you do here. There was no hunting involved, but we led a healthy lifestyle because we were always playing in the fields and in the hills.
Well, I spent a month in London. So how far were you from London?
About 200 miles north.
200 miles north.
In the west, in the northwest.
Yep.
That's where the Industrial Revolution began, because we were the center of the cotton industry. They because of the empire, the cotton was imported from India, and it came into Liverpool. And from Liverpool, they built, like the Americans built the Panama Canal. They built the Manchester Ship Canal to ship the cotton when it came in on the port of Liverpool to Manchester, and there it went into warehouses and then was spun into cotton and the fabric then went to make everything that cotton's made of, that you
Sure.
can imagine.
Mainly clothing.
Yeah, and bedding, you name it, they made it. And basically, that was the center of the Industrial Revolution.
The arms on that chair will slide down if you'd like to.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That'd be nice to lean on.
Yeah.
So you get into high school, right?
Yes. Well, I didn't pass my exams because I froze. So my friends couldn't believe, my mates and everything. They all went off to grammar school.
Okay. What's grammar school like? What age?
11.
11. Okay.
And so my life was decided which path I was going to lead at 11 years old. Can you believe that? So with one exam.
One exam.
You get one chance. So anyway, my mother and father wanted the best for me, so they sent me to a Church of England school, which is
private.
No.
Okay.
No, we were working class. You had
you had to work.
Church of England schools, Catholic schools, and then just common schools. But they wanted me to go to. That was the first piece of guidance educationally that they gave me. And I found that fascinating because I then discovered the Bible because we were given religious instruction by a pastor, and we began to nurture our faith in God.
I love it.
And I always think that if I'd gone to grammar school, with my background, I'd probably ended up a heathen. But
neglected that area.
Yeah, but no, I was that cute little choir boy. We held all the religious services you can imagine, sang in church, and we didn't just celebrate Christmas. Everything, every religious. We just had what we call Shrove. You call it Fat Tuesday. We call it Shrove Tuesday. I'm sure you've all had your punch kiss, it was a new something that, because my mother and father didn't go to church, because my mother said you live your religion every day of your life, and you don't need to go to church. You've just got to be good or do good to others every single day. And that's one of my mantras, is that I try and do a good deed for the day, as they say. So anyway, I came out of there and went to college, and I passed my O-levels and everything, surprisingly, because I thought I'd have frozen through those as well. I think I might have done through one or two. And I went to college and I met somebody there who we were out on the music scene at night. And as you know, as a teenager, you push the envelope and do lots of things that you shouldn't do. And
called the learning phase.
Yeah, the learning phase. And we used to skip English classes because we didn't think we needed them.
Well, you guys were English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But English literature and all that. And we used to DJ down the local youth club. And so we turn up at lunchtime and set all up and then start spinning sounds. And these sounds came from America, of all places. And it was northern soul music that we were infatuated with. And if any of you go on YouTube and type in northern soul dancing, well, those are the nightclubs that we frequented right up until I left home. So as a teenager, that's what we did. We were sort of a clique or a generation that would dance into the night, and it was a movement, a bit like the rockabilly or the rock and roll dancing that you saw back in the 50s. Yeah, but this was now in the early 1970s.
Sure.
And that I had quite a record collection, and yeah, we used to go around everywhere there spinning sounds, and that was a fascinating part of my life. Even after I then on my mother and father, who had fought the Battle of Britain, they wanted me to go in the Royal Air Force. So I
enlisted. Is that how you
yeah,
say it?
I enlisted.
Yeah.
1972.
How old?
17 and a half.
Okay.
And a very proud day. And I joined as a telegraphist. A telegraphist is somebody who communicates.
Okay.
And
Code.
yeah, by basically what we did was secret, so it was all encoded, and that's another phase that I'll get to later in today. Yeah, so anyway, I went in as a telegraphist, and because I was good at sports, I was captain of the football team, you know, that sort of guy you probably all hate.
Which is soccer.
Yeah,
Here.
yeah. Soccer, yeah.
Yeah.
And all those sort of things. But I was a leader. I never wanted to be second best. I wanted everybody to give 100%, and that was just inbuilt in me. And I never quite worked out why that was, but it was just in my DNA, if you will.
Sure.
So anyway, one golden rule, and I don't know whether you've got it in the American military here, is but the golden rule, if you join up to serve your country, is never volunteer afterwards, because they will do something or send you somewhere you don't want to go. So anyway, not applying that thought, I volunteered one day because I wanted the reason I joined the Air Force was to travel the world. And after 2 years, I was still in the United Kingdom.
Not traveling.
Not traveling, no. Not maybe to a different county or a state, as you said, but I wanted to travel abroad because I'd never been abroad. So I volunteered for Special Signals, and they sent me to a place in Lincolnshire where all the Air Force bases are, or not all of them, but the majority, which face the east coast, which is where obviously Russia was. And I underwent training, and that's where I want to branch off from boring you with my own life details, because they eventually sent me, because I was good at Morse and codes and all the rest of it, to a place called Bletchley Park. Now, Bletchley Park is probably somewhere you never heard of. Bletchley Park is basically the place where Alan Turing broke the Enigma code, which changed the Second World War, along with the atomic bomb, of course.
So whose code was he uncoding?
The Germans.
The German code.
The Enigma code was the German code. This was the code that was sent out by operators in Germany to instruct their U-boats, the wolf packs, that was sinking all the American ships, aiding Britain in across the North
They
Atlantic.
sunk a lot of boats.
And killed a lot
lot.
of sailors. Yes. And we were losing that war because we were desperate for the aid that America kindly agreed to send us, and which we were very, very grateful for. That's where they sent me. And Alan Turing was the guy who led that in Hut 8 at the back of the manor house. There is where they set up the machines, and he programmed them to break the Enigma code. Now the way the Enigma code worked was basically it was we're on a standard keyboard or typewriter. You tap in, say, a C. That will then come up as the letter 3, and so forth, and you can substitute that as an I for a letter K, or a number 2 would come up as the letter Z. So that's how complicated it was, but it was even more complicated than that because it was on a cylinder that rotated every certain time. So
each letter meant something different as that thing rotated.
It changed it completely every time. So if after, say, an hour, they decided to turn the cylinder,
now the code was different,
or the cog,
right?
If you will.
Yeah.
The code was totally different. So you only had a window in which to break the code, which is why it was had never been broken.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now we come to something which is probably more to Michael's wheelhouse. Yeah. Is that Alan Turing? Well, let me say first that Alan Turing was basically a homosexual, and back in the war years, if you operated in the Secret Service or British intelligence, as it was, you weren't allowed to be homosexual because you could be bribed and etc. by various outside foreign powers.
Well, wasn't it against the law in Britain back then?
It was,
yeah,
but
the law.
But it was
even deeper.
It was in the military. You were under the Official Secrets Act,
right?
And they didn't want the innermost secrets of the country going to a foreign power.
Sure.
So now Alan Turing was a little bit strange, probably like people think I am, if you've ever met me. But I didn't know why, but this hit a note, and that was with my first realization that people with disabilities are actually people with abilities that normal people don't possess.
They can be brilliant.
And Alan Turing has Asperger's.
Sure. That's on the autism scale.
Which is a form of autism.
Yeah, functional, high function.
Yeah. So apart from the fact he was a homosexual, he was a strange guy, but he was very gifted at breaking codes.
Sure. Which saved, let's say, millions of lives.
Yeah. And and probably turned the war, because Britain could only hold out so far without American assistance. So they broke the code, and the wolf packs. They knew where the wolf packs were, because they hunted the submarines, the U-boats, they hunted in packs. So there could be, half a dozen of them going in on a convoy.
Gotcha.
So, but of course, in communications, as any mariners out there, you give your location away. You signal your location, or transmit it. So it was also handy in hunting them down.
Right.
Because the British were intercepting the orders that come from Berlin.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was very interesting. So that was Alan Turing. Unfortunately, once he'd served his purpose, he was hailed as a hero, but because he didn't conform to the morals and society as it was then, he was given two choices. He could either go to prison, this is after the war, or he could do what was then chemical castration. This is where you drank something
to decrease the male hormones,
and testosterone and everything else, and basically shortly after that he died, but he didn't die from what he was drinking. He died from eating an apple impregnated with arsenic.
Did he do it, or did somebody else?
Nobody knows. Well, it's one of those enigmas, to coin a word, that we'll never know. So, mysteries that we'll never know. Anyway, that's enough about Alan Turing, and how it relates to my experience with life.
Well, how long were you in the Air Force?
I was in there for 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. Yep. And I ended up going after my training to Berlin, and I served in the Cold War behind enemy lines, intercepting codes from our enemies.
Sure.
And I worked on the Morse side. There was also Russian linguists and etc. that did that side, and we also had the early electronic intelligence as well. That this was all new things that was coming in, starting when I came in. So that was that chapter, if you will, and but it's the Asperger thing in relation to this podcast that I'd really love to discuss with Michael.
Sure.
So if you can give, because that's way over my head or out of my depth, can you give the audience here a idea of what Asperger's syndrome is?
Sure. Asperger's is a high functioning autism. Autism is a neurological, let's say we could call it a deficit. Essentially what happens in autism, they're figuring out, is the little part of DNA at the end of the strand doesn't form the same way. And that causes some of the changes in the way the person interacts with the environment. And so in some situations, like with Asperger's, it can produce amazing intelligence. One of the people that you and I know in the audience probably knows well, Elon Musk, is a high functioning Asperger's. And I think their brains just work at a very fast speed. They're awkward. If you ever watch Elon on TV or something, his movements are not very fluid. He's awkward in how he talks.
Yeah, the words don't come out as quick as he's thinking.
Yeah. But he's definitely done some interesting things, and he'd be a fun one. Let's talk about him, man.
Yeah.
He's obviously doing some stuff with the space world. I've got a daughter that's super interested in space. She's actually working to do
In the-
Space Force. So she loves everything to do with space travel and the cosmos and the planets and figuring out that kind of stuff. But one of the things that he proposes is that we need to become a multi-planet species. Have you heard him talk about that?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do you think we need to become multi-planet?
Way out of my league again. It's not something I opted for a different extraterrestrial experience. This was another chapter, if you will. I don't want to come away from Elon Musk too long, but basically, when I came out of the Air Force, I had many sort of toyed with many sort of jobs and whatever. But whilst I went back to university, updated my skills in computers, and ended up at the cutting edge of computers, in the sense that I relocated eventually. I'm not going to bore you with all the different stages of that, but I eventually ended up project managing relocations for some of the biggest businesses in the world across Europe. And I basically, when I was project managing this, I only hired the best. You either were the best or in your field or whatever, or you didn't get the job. So it wasn't a question of price. Price never came into it. Basically, we pay whatever it took. But I could guarantee, imagine me walking into your business where it's a multi-billion-pound business. We're talking companies,
International.
Large,
Yep.
international businesses. And imagine me walking into your business and you've got everybody sat around the table, and they'll go to, and the question that always used to come out, because I used to go there with a contingent from my business, from the business I work for. And the question that always asked out was, can you guarantee, because this would be done over a weekend and it would be moved, the computers, which were data centers, everything on different platforms, can you guarantee that that we will have normal service on a Monday morning? So they'd shut down Friday, Saturday, and we'd have 2-3 days to move, sometimes one day, to move these businesses hundreds of miles, sometimes across countries.
Sure.
But can you guarantee that they will be live on Monday?
Right.
And I said, and to their amazement, I used to tell them, I said, there's only 2 guarantees in life, and that's death and taxes.
That's true in England too?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So my sales manager, who was with me, he used to duck under the desk when I said this.
Right.
And I said, and then I went further and I said, it was probably, but you probably hear Elon Musk say similar things to this, sort of what outrageous or whatever. And then I turn around to the heads of these businesses and say, you're quite free to go and find somebody, some other company to go and do this. Some other big conglomerate like Hewlett Packard, IBM, Sun, whatever platform where they had relocation people. And I said, but I have a 100 record. And this was over 2 years. I said, and I've never let anybody down. And barring hurricanes, cyclones, like they've just got in Australia coming in, and bridges falling down, I said, I'm 100% confident that your business will be okay on Monday morning. And believe it or not, they gave me the job.
Yeah.
Even though there was plenty of other
guys. Pretty good.
Yeah. But anyway, how did we get there?
Well, tell me this. So you finish up. How did you get over to the United States?
Whilst I was working in computers, I was surrounded by a lot of people far more intelligent than me, who were gifted in either computing or problem solving, developers, etc. So I decided to that I was going to end my computing career because I decided that I was at that crossroads, maybe midlife crisis, that it goes under lots of guises.
Sure.
And I decided one day I was just walking across the car park, and I just decided I'm going to give my resignation in. I'm going to do what I want to do and not what everybody else all my life has told me to do.
Wow.
And I sold everything.
That was a good day.
I sold my house, sold my everything, because I just wanted a fresh start. And then I took a blues shortly afterwards. Just before I left, these geniuses, as I call them, helped me develop an international blues website.
Oh, interesting.
And basically, I started, I developed that, and you're probably
you're talking blues, the music.
Blues
right?
music, yeah, a international blues music.
So this is going back to when you were spinning records now.
Yeah. So anyway, on there, I created, apart from doing reviews, all the record companies used to send me, well, not all, but a lot of record companies, like Roof Records, which were massive in Germany, and had a lot of American artists on there, blues artists and all the rest of it. They basically, I used to get all the information, review them, and give not always a positive review, but I give them an honest review of somebody's music and put it all out on the website. And also, I gave links, more importantly, to other people's websites.
Gotcha.
And
other people's music.
Yeah, other people's music. Right. Now, go back 20 years, and I can assure you, even though musicians are very, very talented at what they do, which is why people buy their records, they are not computer people.
Yeah, they just like to make music.
They like to make music. So what I did, you're probably familiar, 2003, which is the year I decided to do all this, and we developed the website. There was a predecessor to Facebook called MySpace.
I remember it.
And that came out, Facebook didn't come out till 2 years later, and that was the demise of MySpace. But for 2 years, in the first 2 years I did the blues website, I was able to give the musicians that I knew, and the reason I wanted to do this whole international blues website, I never made a penny out of it. This was a, how do you call it,
A hobby, a passion.
No, a passion, yeah, but a philanthropist
Sure.
gesture.
Yep.
Because covering the music musicians, you get very close to them, and they're wonderful people out there.
Sure.
And I'd seen so many go by the wayside because they go through college, university, meet other very talented musicians, and they make great music.
Yeah.
But guess what happens? A beautiful girl comes along, and they need to earn money to buy a house and all the other things, have children and all the rest of it. And a lot, that's not the only reason, but a lot of things happen to musicians that stop them progressing and fulfilling their life's ambition.
Sure.
And this was heartbreaking for me. I became very sensitive to this. So I gave them a page. I used to ring them up or meet them. And if I went to gigs, we'd communicate, and we were constantly in touch one way or another. And they used to give me their gig list, which pub they were playing in or which venue, nightclub or whatever, so that people knew where they were playing and could pay to go in to keep not only the musicians going, but also the venues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this went on for a couple of years.
So basically you became like a blues promoter?
Yes, a promotion. Yeah. So I got all the promos and everything. Anyway, I then, through contacts and through promoting this music, decided to take a blues sojourn down the Mississippi, which is the home of the blues in the USA, of course.
Sure.
And that was life-changing. Again, this was another life changer.
Yes, it's great. So is Memphis on the Mississippi?
Yes.
Yep. And so is New Orleans?
Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah, there's some good towns along that river. Yeah.
So I flew into Chicago in 2004, and when I got to the airport, lo and behold, destiny was awaiting. There was a Scottish blues journalist seeking me out because he'd already got the guest list on the blue that was going to go down the Mississippi.
Oh, nice.
And he wanted to share a room because we were in twos, and he wanted to share a room with me. And we came on that journey. We became known as the Blues Brothers.
Oh, that's a good one.
And because other people were there for other reasons. Yeah, sightseeing,
Sure.
And there was a couple of Australians that did rockabilly, and there was loads of different genres because we were going to right down the Mississippi, which of course.
So you're traveling on a boat?
On on a coach to begin with. On a coach.
Yeah.
And anyway, we flew in. We had stretch limousines. Went to some cagey hotel. And all the rest of it. And the first night out was in a blues bar, and I'd recommend it to anybody on the west side of Chicago, if it's still safe, that is. Yeah. And we saw he knew the beauty of meeting Bill. This was Bill Moody, by the way, who's since passed, but was a total inspiration for me. One of the best writers I've ever met. He had already charted our route out, i.e. which bars, which clubs, what was happening, and all the rest of it.
Sure.
Yeah. And amazingly, the first night he said, "Okay, let's go." So we went off to Rose's lounge on the west side of Chicago. You can Google it.
That's the one you recommend?
I would recommend that to anyone.
Yep.
There are other ones, of course. But we got there, and we saw Vance Kelly. And this was a surreal happening for me because I was in America the first night in. I just couldn't believe I was at one of the places I'd always want to visit, like a juke joint or a blues bar, listening to real blues in a blues club on the west side of Chicago.
Oh,
That might not sound to any American anything special, but for someone from England, that is like, it just blows your mind.
hey.
Yeah, so I'll come back to this later. But anyway, we went down, we checked out the hotel, went down to, what's the place with where they built half a McDonald's sign? St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah, they got that
oranges.
big. It looks
Yeah.
like they've just started to do that
Yeah.
M on
Yeah.
the. Yeah. Anyway, we went down to St. Louis, and then there was another 2 blues clubs we went to there, and the biggest disappointment there is that we went to see Blueberry Hill, and of course Blueberry Hill is famous for the song,
Right.
and what's his face? I'm trying to think of the who sang Blueberry Hill. Anyway, we went there, and they had the World Darts Championship on. So you can imagine I was not happy. But anyway, that was one place I went to where it didn't work out. But we had all these experiences all the way down the Mississippi. There was this, that, and the other. We got went to Nashville, and we experienced country music.
Yeah.
Went to the stayed at the Grand Ole Opry Hotel. Went to the Grand Ole Opry. Experienced the full Grand Ole Opry
There's a lot of
performance.
history there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went to all the bars and clubs down on the main street there. It was just every time we moved, it was just a happening.
Did you get to Memphis?
We got to Memphis.
Okay, what do you remember there?
Well, at this stage, this is where I want to present you with, just to commemorate my visit, and also I see you've got some space on the walls here. Yeah, and I'll just get them. You have to excuse me. I'll just get them out. I'm hooked in here.
Yeah.
I'll just get them out of my bag here. I'd like to present these to you, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
Now, the first one, which is Stax Studios.
Soulsville, USA. Stax.
Yep.
Yes.
Now, this, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, if you want to read that out on the back.
Oh, yeah. Stax Studio, 926 East McLaramore Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, is where Stax Records originated, and today is proudly house of Stax Museum of American Soul Music. Stax initially started as a satellite records and was renamed Stax in 1959. Stax soon became known as Soulsville, USA, in the same way Detroit-based Motown was called Hitsville, USA. The Memphis soul and sound came out of Stax Records, was unique and a combination of black and white musicians, songwriters, producers, all working closely, changing the way music was made forever.
There you go.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took that in 2004, that picture.
Yeah, we got some room on the shelves.
Yeah. And this second one is the birthplace of rock and roll.
Ooh.
Sun Studio in Memphis.
Oh, man.
Now, you'll know a lot of the people out of here, I'm sure. But anyway.
Yeah, but
Congratulations, Michael.
Is I've spent some time in Memphis.
Good.
So these are great gifts. Thank you very much, John. Okay.
Let the audience know what that is.
So this one, Sun Studio, is at 706 Union Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, was the birthplace of rock and roll music, and outside it hangs the landmark double-sided Gibson guitar. Sam Phillips started the Memphis recording studio in 1950, which later became the Sun Record in 1952, where he first recorded many of the talented and influential musicians who would later change the world. some of the legendary blues, gospel, R&B, country, and rock and roll artists who Sam Phillips recorded at this studio between 1951 and 1960 were Elvis Presley, everyone knows that name, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, Ike Turner, The Parishioners, Charlie Rich, Howlin' Wolf, and B.B. King. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What a beautiful gift for the studio here.
There you go. Congratulations, Michael. You deserve it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, where were we?
Well,
we're in Memphis, weren't we?
Yes. Tell me some of the big names that you've promoted in blues.
Probably the peak of. I later went back to Memphis. That was in 2004.
Ironically, the year I started my practice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That was a big year.
There you go. You see,
yeah.
Destiny.
Destiny.
So after Memphis, we got the Amtrak down to a place called Lafayette, which is on the bayou down in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crocodiles and all the rest of it, snakes and this, that, and the other. And we went out on the boat there on the bayou and then visited the capital, Baton Rouge, where Huey Long is very famous. There's a huge statue outside the capital there. Huey Long is, for people who don't know him, I'll throw something else here that might interest you film buffs out there. One of the best films I've seen is one called Kingfish, and it stars I can't remember exactly who, but some very famous artists in that. But Huey Long basically put New Orleans on the map because although it was a state, there was no roads going to it.
Oh, interesting.
Or shall I say, there was roads,
maybe
but
like just one main road.
It went it went across the bayou or because it was literally sectioned off in the rainy season. It was and Huey Long, who was the governor, basically withheld taxes from Washington unless they built a road to New Orleans, which is I can't remember which highway that is, the highway that we came in on, which is right down into New Orleans. So it's a fascinating film, a film called Kingfish for you film lovers.
History movie.
And a little bit more. Anyway, it's a fascinating film. We went there. Anyway, I went when we got there. I experienced some of the local cuisine, your poor boys and crayfish and alike, and I got a sort of attached to that. And it was a marvel, and I saw many artists that I'd later connect with down there, and it was another mind-blowing experience. Anyway, I came back in 2007. This is where, in answer to your previous question, I came back in 2007. I think I went 3 times to Memphis that year, but it culminated in the 50 Years of Soul. Now we're going back to Stax, which is very dear, because a lot of the sounds that I spun as a northern DJ came out of Stax and Atlantic and Motown. So they were holding the 50 years of Stax, and the special guests were when I was a DJ, my signature tune was from Isaac Hayes, who was one of the artists on Stax.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was when I got to meet him. I don't know, I almost fell to the floor because this guy was my idol.
Sure.
And had been one of many idols that I had. And he was there. And so was a guy called Willie Mitchell. Now Willie Mitchell was, he built High Records. And you're probably thinking what High Records is. Well, High Records was famous for artists like Al Green, not the politician, by the way, that you've probably seen on television lately.
Kicked out
Not that one.
Wow.
But I'm so tired of being alone and all the others. But he was an actual preacher. He had his own church in Memphis, which I've been to. And Peoples, I Can't Stand the Rain. Those sort of artists came out of High Records. So along with Stax and whatnot, I also got when I was up at Stax, the manager there introduced me to another person that became very important for me. Was the head of Ardent Records. Now, Ardent Records was set up because he had the same equipment as what Stax had. But you can imagine Motown in its heyday and Stax in its heyday. You had to get in line to get anything recorded because there was so much music coming out of those. Sure. It was just mayhem. Yeah. So he built a radio station on the other side of Memphis. But Stax discovered, because they were obviously listening on the airwaves, that he had the same equipment that they recorded all the artists at Stax Records. And they thought, wow, we can record twice as many artists, twice as fast if we went over to Ardent Records. Yeah. So, yeah, that was, and they went on to record after that. When they became a recording studio, they've recorded some of the greatest albums you've ever heard. I'll name one off the top of my head: Led Zepp 3, ZZ Top, Eliminator.
Oh yeah,
all came out of that. All came out of that studio, and they kindly give me. They just built the third studio down there, and they give me a tour of the whole 3 studios. And when I was there in when was it? 2007. That was their 40th anniversary.
Wow, how awesome!
Yeah, so it's a Stax's 50th anniversary, and Ardent Records, which was formed 10 years later in the 60s, that was there.
That was theirs.
Yes.
Well, one thing I'd like to do, because I call this a midlife wisdom podcast, and you have a lot of wisdom. We were talking a little bit before we got on the air here. And I said, could you give me a little intro? And you go, I can't do that. I've lived 19 lives, right? And I love that because that allows you to kind of change. Like you're not so into just one identity that if you lose that identity or if you change, you don't know who you are. One of the things that happens with people is as they age, if they're very inflexible, they struggle. They struggle with getting older. They struggle with people. So something you said to me that was really powerful is like when you walk into a coffee shop or something, you can have wonderful conversations with people. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that. Like they don't converse very well. They don't want to meet strangers. Tell me how you see the world as you're aging, as you meet people, and how you've brought that kind of into your midlife. Give me some of that wisdom.
I think being a DJ helped
Sure.
to break that barrier.
Because you met so many
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it helped me with the ladies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any problem talking to anybody.
Mm.
But it was namely, you could see a shared interest. I mean, I'm sure people who go and play the all popular pickleball these days, they go and play pickleball and they end up talking to somebody who's got mutual interests. It's like going to a nightclub.
Sure.
I remember when. I've got a funny story here because I want to keep this light-hearted because there's a lot covered. My first date was in a disco in Accrington. It was actually called Accrington Disco.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think I was 14, 15. I ain't got a clue anything about women or life or anything. Well, I actually had a lot of life experience, but I didn't know anything about women. Anyway, we went in there and back then, all the girls, they used to put their handbags in the middle of the floor and dance around them.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, I was sat there and then we got up to dance and they had, Frank, they were playing all the good old stuff, like Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons and the Crystals, the Ronettes, and you name it, the Phil Spector sound and all that sort of thing. Anyway, we sat down and and she said, I'm just going to the restroom. So anyway, I'm sat there and I'm waiting patiently for her to come back, and nothing. Sort of this. About 5 minutes later, this other girl come and sat next to me, and I'm waiting, and eventually, this girl next to me spoke to me and said, have I basically done anything wrong? And I said, oh, and then I recognized it was her. and those of you, I'm sorry that I don't want to get. This is going back a long, long way. We're going back 60,
Sure.
50, over 50 years here. So a lot of your audience here won't be able to even relate to this. But what was a fashion or a fad back in the 60s was you could buy paper dresses in matchboxes. Like the kitchen, the large kitchen matchboxes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you could there was a dress in there.
A paper dress.
Huh. Right. So anyway, the beauty of that was that you could actually put it in your handbag. Yeah. And go, and if you wanted, you could change. Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. If you drink got spilled on it or whatever.
Sure.
So anyway, this girl had gone to the restroom.
She changed her
dress and probably her makeup or whatever it was, and was sat next to me for another 10 minutes, and I didn't even know it was her. Yeah. Anyway, how do we get to? I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's a bit of history. So one of my first encounters with the opposite sex. Anyway, we were in.
We're talking about as people get older. Sometimes they struggle.
Yeah, but because of things. So anyway, it was that really, because back then I was pretty shy.
Sure.
And but through various experiences, and then, as I say, I then became a Northern Soul DJ, and I think that's where it changed.
Well, you had mentioned something about the coffee studio in your hometown.
Yeah. So the one over here is I've met more people there than because that's me and the woman who changed my life go for coffee, and we meet a lot of people from different backgrounds there.
Sure.
Who've had it, would you believe it, even wilder lives than I have. So it makes fascinating listening.
Good conversation.
Yeah, because I'm not going to mention them, but name-wise. But yeah, so that is, and also going back to the medical side of things, you notice people. I notice people because I thought I had a disability. I notice other people's disabilities. What you would describe as a disability, but now I see that in people as an ability, not a disability, like Elon Musk, for example.
Sure.
Yeah, he can't, he's disorientated.
Yeah, he struggles in some areas.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are people out there who are beautiful. I mean, we're all beautiful human beings if you care to look deep enough.
Absolutely.
But
everybody has a story.
Exactly. Or as Rod Stewart says, every picture tells a story.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you look for the good in people,
yeah,
and not tear people apart, you won't go far wrong.
We're struggling with that in the United States currently.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah,
but
it's the polarization.
Yeah,
and I think that social media has to have an influence on that. Because I was just saying this to my wife the other day. I've got daughters, and there's an app or something that the kids play on called Snapchat. Okay, and one of the things is if I send you a message and you respond, it starts something called a streak.
Starts what?
A streak. It's called a streak. Like how many times you and I respond. And so it keeps track of that. And if I don't respond one day, then it breaks the streak. Right?
Or after one day.
After one day. So kids are really interested in keeping these streaks together because then, I mean, I don't understand all this, but you can have streaks that go on for X amount of months, years, whatever. If you break it, I think other people can see this. But what I was saying was this thing is changing our value system, that you're more interested in just responding to keep the streak going, right? Than getting deep into understanding or knowing somebody. Because there's no conversation. Like I send you a picture, you put a thumbs up, boom, that keeps the streak going. You send me a picture, I put a thumbs up. There's no conversation in that. And so what it's doing is it's changing the value system. The kids now are just interested in surface level friendships. They never really get to know anybody. Excuse me. They don't get to know anybody deeply. And that's changing the way we interact as a society. We could jump on any social media and find a lot of divisiveness that's really, really out there, polarizing people. They don't want to sit down. That's kind of why I started this podcast, was to have some amazing conversations in this room.
With real people.
Real people with amazing lives and great stories. But I think there's two barriers to that. You got to have curiosity, right? You got to be interested in people. Like that's one and two. You have to be curious and you have to be interested in other people. And those two things feed that curiosity of people. Like for you to talk to somebody in a coffee shop, you're interested in what they have to say. And that interest is so important as we get older, because people struggle. I hear it all the time in the clinic. People struggle getting older because their bodies can't do what they remember they used to be able to do. And their identity is so wrapped up in performance. And that identity change as we age, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. But being able to find other outlets, and that's why when you talked about the coffee shop, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in their retirement age that are not doing that.
Yeah.
They're struggling.
Oh, there's people all ages, you know, from babies in there till people who you think are not long with us anymore. But anyway, put it nicely. And you meet characters in there, and you, but it's entirely up to you what you decide to entertain or not entertain or whatever. But that's just a coffee shop. It doesn't stop there. When I first came here to Harbour Springs, which is just over 5 years ago now, we didn't know anybody. My wife has a cousin here, but that wasn't the reason we came to Harbour Springs. We used to come. Julie used to come every year when she was a child, and had relatives here, which have since passed.
Sure.
And
Memories.
some fantastic memories,
Yeah.
which is what Harbour Springs and this area, Petoskey and everything, is all about. People make memories here as well. Sound like a tourist thing. I think that's on one of the tourist things. Make memories in Harbour Springs. I didn't know anybody or whatever, but I found that just I could be cutting the grass and somebody would walk by and make a comment or whatever, and then we start a conversation, and it just went from there, really. And then we got to know our neighbours and just normal stuff, if you will.
Wait. You don't have normal neighbors. So who's the guy across the street that puts on like a music festival for a week or something crazy?
You
don't have to use his name, but
no.
Tell me about that.
If I told you that,
That's not a normal neighbor.
We've met, shall we say, some very interesting people since we've come here. We didn't meet them. I lived for 10 years down in some, for want of a better word, a hick town down in lower Michigan. Yeah. And the people were very nice. Yeah. But they lacked character.
They weren't interesting.
They weren't interesting people. Not to me. Yeah. But then again, I probably wasn't interesting to them because I couldn't talk long about tractors and other. With the guy who actually used to help me do our estate or whatever it was, a large piece of land down there. Yeah. His thing was tractors. It was like me going to an Eric Clapton concert or whatever, but if he went to a tractor show, that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. And I fully understood that, but I don't know anything about tractors, and to be quite honest, I don't really want to know anything about tractors if I'm blatantly honest. It just wasn't my thing. You know, everybody's got their thing, and you normally, shall we say, warm to people like that's why you and me get on so famously, is with like interests or subjects that interest you.
So tell me how your interesting neighbor. What do they do? This is so cool.
He's I don't know which aspect because he's got so many facets. But let's take the music thing. He puts on a couple of times a year a festival. I call them
private concert.
A private concert. Yeah. He's got definitely the best stage I've seen in Harbour.
Private stage.
Private stage, yeah.
These are normal neighbors here.
Well, they're my sort of neighbours. Yeah, people. Yeah, and he's got different. Being an experienced musician, of course, I'm used to dealing with musicians through the blues website. We connected on the musical side of things, and he sort of brought me into the fold, and then I met all these other interesting characters. Now these are guys that you would find if you sat down with them, they come from the West Coast hippie movements, through all the psychedelia, through from way back in the 50s to the Beach Boys. So I've got everything in common with them.
Right.
Yeah, and we could talk down and you need a flask of coffee, not a cup of coffee. I mean, it never stops, and we'll stop it and then we'll meet again, and sort of things like that. But
so how does this music festival work?
It by private invitation, and it's the best kept secret in Harbour. That's why I'm not saying. That's why I'm not saying too much.
Yeah, no, and we don't want to give any of this away. Do you play any music there when you go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What instrument do you play?
I've never classed myself as a musician.
Uh-huh.
I fronted a band when I was a teenager, and since actually, but I fronted a band, and the only reason I got hired wasn't because of my voice, but because my memory, I could actually remember the lyrics. And if you're a vocalist, half the battle is the lyrics.
Knowing all the lyrics.
No, the lyrics, because they
Yeah.
don't want anybody who gets up there. I mean, now you've got these, what do they call them? Teleprompters in front of you, and it's like karaoke.
Yeah, it's not real music.
Yeah. And but I've never had to do that, because you give me a song, a famous song especially, or of a particular genre, and I more or less, I'm not saying I know all the lyrics, but I can cruise it, or what do you say? Get through it. And I'm very expressionate, again, because of my disability. And people tend to sort of laugh at that. And it works. It's whatever works. You don't know until. That's why they might have 10 guitarists or 10 keyboardists come and audition, because they never know who's going to be the one. And it's just like meeting somebody in the coffee shop, for example. Some people are not for you, and some people you can talk to all day long. So it's just one of those things.
But you don't know unless you have that conversation.
No. Exactly. But which is why these festivals, we have open mic, and we have these musicians coming from downstate, even out of state, to play. Sure. And it's absolutely fascinating.
I bet it is.
Yeah. So
how long does this little festival go? Talking one night, 3 nights a week? No,
it's just a festival, just a couple of days. 3 days actually in the summer. But it's nice to hear, because people turn up and they're at the same stage where you are, because they've gone through that, because they're, I won't say they're coming to the end. I think that's a bit
premature,
dark. But they've had, shall we say, they've peaked in a different era.
So what I've heard it referred to as the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So like in football, there's 4 quarters,
mm-hmm.
and the last quarter is the last phase.
The most important phase.
Sure. But they've maybe done some amazing things in their young life. Now they're right at retirement or retired, and they still have a lot of interest. This is the group that you're kind of talking about.
Yeah. And you go there with the music connection, but you come out with a totally with an additional one, because these people have earned their living not necessarily through music. They play music for the love of it. And you then discover that maybe they've got another passion or a hobby, like sport, like you and me, or something else that you can bring to the party. And it's life's what you make it. Sure. It can be humdrum. You just function and
Just get by.
just get by. But a lot of people are happy with that because they don't have to think too much.
But I don't think they're happy with that. I
Well,
think they do it,
yeah,
but I wouldn't say they're happy with it.
yeah,
I think one of the things that helps us as we get older is a hobby, right?
Mm.
Or a passion.
mm,
So, you know, you mentioned soccer. In your world, in England, they call it football.
Mm.
How did your love for football develop?
Oh,
We're going to go off the rails here.
we're good. We're gonna.
Here we go.
I grew up again.
It is pretty amazing.
Accrington Stanley.
Uh-huh.
Accrington Stanley. That's how it's said in where I come from. I lost a lot of my accent. But anyway, Accrington Stanley was formed in the 1800s, and it was one of the founders of what we now know as the English Premier League, the English Football League. It was down there, and it had different divisions. And now let's dissect soccer. Why did soccer come into being? Back in the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, men, and it was men, predominantly men there, and I'll give you the reason why, is that men worked mundane lives in factories and other areas of their life. They obviously had their family lives and everything, but going back to just functioning, which is what we were saying there. So they needed an outlet. So people worked a lot longer in those days than they do now. So you've only got certain windows, which was at the weekend.
Sure.
Saturday, you went to watch football, and Sunday you went to church. And similar thing to here, probably, you know, with your kids, etc. Anyway, so you've been working in a factory all week, and you decide you want to go to a football match. Well, back then, there was no television, no media, no anything. So it was all done in person or over the telephone.
Or the radio?
Well, sort of, yeah. So you would form a club in your, like you could have here, you'd have, like you have Harbour Springs football in the school football, and Petoskey school football, and then further afield. And you would then play at 3 o'clock. This is the thing. Back then, football was only played at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. That was, you can imagine that all over the country. Yeah. So you went to watch the football, and before and after, you probably go to the pub with your mates.
Sure.
Yeah. And basically let off steam, just like young men do, and old men do. And then once you'd finished that, you go home, probably drunk, to the wife or whatever. But that's how it was back in those days. It was your one day where you could go and do something. Yeah. And then, of course, when you woke up in the morning, you went to church or whatever or whatever you did. That so I grew up in Accrington, and I grew up right next to the football ground of Accrington Stanley.
Oh, interesting.
And my school, Peel Park, we won. We were champions of Accrington. We won the league, the cup, and everything at schoolboy level, right up to 11. But at 11 years old, Accrington Stanley went bankrupt.
That's the whole city?
The club.
The club.
Oh no, the city. Well, no, it's thriving. It was the Industrial Revolution. But the club borrowed money for a stand, and it couldn't repay the debt. So it went bankrupt, and they were kicked out of the Football League, of which there was the first, the second, the third, and the fourth division then, each consisting of about 20 teams, similar to what it is now, just different names. So I grew up next to there, and when we won the cup for the second year running, as long with the league, with the league, we were presented with the original Accrington Stanley football shirts.
Nice.
Now you can imagine the value of that shirt today. This was in 1966. Which incidentally, for anybody else out there, that's the only time that England ever won the World Cup. But so I had to get that one in. And anyway, yeah, we were presented with these, and of course, I was so proud to wear this shirt. You imagine a little kid, 11 years old. Yeah. So anyway, I went out, and back then you didn't have grass on the fields; it was mud.
Oh,
yeah, because it started off grass, but as the season went on, well, yeah, and one thing Lancashire is famous for, where I was born, is rain.
So it was always wet.
It was always wet, and if you're trampling all over it, it becomes mud. So anyway, I went out, played a game or two of football, and eventually, of course, I had to. This shirt needed washing. Yeah, because I was so proud to wear it. So my mum put it in there, and the Accrington Stanley's colours were red and white. And it was a cotton shirt. We're in the cotton industry here, don't forget. Yeah. And she put it in the washing machine, and the white came out pink.
Pink and white.
And back then, I didn't want to wear pink. So it just wasn't masculine there. I mean, boys were in blue, girls were in pink. I know this sounds very, what's the word? PC incorrect, or whatever you want to say now, because the world's changed completely from the days of previous, if you go back a few generations. And so my mum had ruined my famous Accrington Stanley football shirt. Anyway, you wanted to say where that came in. So anyway, when we continued from there, and then I went in the Air Force, and I was captain of the football team there. And and I've always I supported Manchester City and all my family, because Manchester City only won trophies at the end of the 60s. But since then, they've won absolutely nothing until 12 years ago when we won the league. So there's no sweet without the sour, as they say. But my family used to laugh at me because they won everything, Manchester United. Manchester City didn't win any. Manchester United is a household word even in this country. And especially with David Beckham and all that sort of thing going on with the media. So my passion for football and Manchester City is where we are now, and that's what I watch on television here now. Yeah,
I love it. That's a good passion. It's a good thing to do, and I love your passion for it.
Oh yeah,
it's one of the things I like a lot.
I probably when Aguero scored, you can Google this, but just put in the Aguero goal, Aguero. This is when we hadn't won anything, I think in 35 years or something. We got to the end of the season, and you can imagine if a team that you're supporting and then another team's playing at the same time on a Saturday afternoon, or Sunday. I can't remember if it's Saturday or Sunday, but anyway, Manchester United had won their match up in the north somewhere, and we're celebrating because they'd won the league, and we were 2-1 down. Guess what? In the last few minutes, we equalised, and then in injury time, and it's very famous. If you look up the Aguero goal, he scored in injury time.
Oh wow!
And it's virtually, from a connoisseur's point of view, it's by many connoisseurs of the game, it's the greatest goal ever scored.
Right.
And watching here in the US, I got up off the couch and ran around the couch 3 times, and everybody in the room thought I was insane. But all the passion, the energy, the euphoria of that moment.
30 years of
30, just and the way it was, it was one of those quintessential moments in life, and you don't get many of them.
Right.
But so I'd like to talk about another subject once we've funded this one. I've actually met your daughter Hope, and what impressed me most about Hope was that she knew, she had a vision. How many teenage girls have a vision at that age? How old is she now?
She's 20.
20. But speaking to her, she is light years ahead of what she's actually imagining what she can do and achieve in life.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I can't remember meeting another young person with a vision, almost like a visionary. And I wish her all the best in the Space Force. And I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever she will reach the heavens, whatever she does.
She's a very driven young lady.
Yes, yes, and kudos to her for that. But for those of you who probably don't want to be shot up in a spacecraft to the higher heavens, to the moon or Mars, I have another alternative. Take up scuba diving.
Go down.
Yeah. One of the other things, when I decided to end my computer career, apart from setting up the International Blues website, I also decided that, because I worked 6 days a week back then, weekends, and I didn't have very much time for basically at least a decade. And I needed, and they say you need a holiday. Well, I took one. Anyway, I decided I wanted to go scuba diving because it was on my bucket list. So I started my bucket list earlier in life, in my 50s, early 50s. And I got I looked where you could go scuba diving and where the best scuba diving was in the world. And one of them was Cuba. So I took a flight to Cuba, and I became an experienced, over the space of 3 years, I became an experienced scuba diver.
Very cool.
And the guys, the Cuban people, I love the place. It was on a place called Cayo Coco, which is an island to the north. It's a bit like your what is it down your Keys?
Oh yeah, Florida Keys.
On the Florida Keys. Yeah. But it's on their northern shore, and it's a key off the north there. And I learned to scuba dive. And I've experiences. You go down, you will see canyons, rivers, caves, wrecks, some of the most beautiful colors you've ever imagined. Not just from the fish, but from the coral, the reefs, and the fish, and everything else down there. Just remember, it's not your world down there, just like space isn't. And anything can come out of the water there at you. I've had experiences with barracudas, sharks, and all sorts of fish. Yeah, more friendly fish. Yeah. They're normally good if you leave them alone. Yeah, but that I was taken to a city, the third largest city in Cuba, on the south side of the island. The north, the sea isn't as clear as the south, because the north is on the Atlantic, and the Atlantic's fairly rough. Yeah. You get some great diving there, don't get me wrong, but you go to the south, because I said to my friend, who became a friend of mine, a Cuban, where else can I see, experience something else other, because we'd done all the reefs off Cayo Coco, I think, or most of them that I was interested in, seeing and had lots of experiences. And he took me down to Trinidad, which is the third largest city in Cuba.
I had a friend from Trinidad.
In Cuba?
Yeah, he played soccer at my college.
Oh, he was a Cuban then?
Yep.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Yeah, so we went there, and we experienced lots of other things there, but I don't want to go too far off, or we'll be here all day. So we went diving, and it's the one and only time you've probably heard the expression from divers and whatnot, if you're fortunate enough to know anyone who goes scuba diving, big blue, the expression big blue. Mm-hmm. Now, we were going along the reef, coolly along the reef, and we saw all these canyons, caves. It's like you've got a city beneath you, and you're swimming just along, and then where it goes down to the deep, that creates, if you've ever been in an IMAX cinema, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the effect is similar, and you're looking out into the ocean, but it's infinity. You actually experience infinity. Something that you're not going to see it here, right, on Earth, on land. Yeah. You go down, and there before you is infinity, and it's like a wall under it, because there's no end to it, so it becomes like a screen, a wall, right. And anything can come through that wall down there. Could be a shark, could be a whale, could be anything. Sure. And the way I experienced it, we're just going along, and because divers give signals to each other, and he pointed to the left, and I looked over, and I knew exactly what he was talking about, because it's something I've never before or since experienced. And so for anybody, as I say, who is not lucky enough to go to the moon, sure, yeah, that would be a fabulous alternative. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there, because that's one of my life. That's one of the, and I like to enrich other people's lives. Sure. Because if you can share your experiences with people, it enlightens them, and I find that very satisfying. Sure. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up soon. Do you have anything else you want to touch on? I was going to bring up the Inklings. Go ahead. Let's hear it. When I met the love of my life, I wanted to impress her, of course. So this is what Michael's been trying to get me to on various occasions. Anyway, and he knows my wife. And anyway, she flew over to England, and I'd lived in many places, but at that time I was living in Oxford, which a lot of Americans are familiar with, because there's thousands of Americans in Oxford. They go there and never go back to America. Yeah. So either on the university and exchange visits, all that sort of thing. So she landed at Heathrow. We got on the coach and went back to Oxford, and we put our bags where I was living, our luggage. And I took her into the centre of Oxford at a place called, wait for it, we've got a drum roll here. The Eagle and Child. Now, the Eagle and Child isn't just a pub. For those of you who visit England, if you travel to Oxford, it's about an hour from London. So anyway, we went to the Eagle and Child and sat at the very fireplace for a full English breakfast. This was late morning. The pub's open at 11 in England, by the way. So about midday, we sat down and ate at the very fireplace that the Inklings used to eat at.
Ooh.
Now, the Inklings, let me look, and because the Inklings were an informal literary discussion group associated with J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis.
Oh, interesting.
At the University of Oxford for nearly 2 decades, between the early 1930s and 49. The Inklings were literary enthusiasts who praised the value of narrative in fiction and encouraged the writings of fantasy. Now, I'll branch off here again because I want to quote Einstein on this, because Einstein is quoted as that imagination is more important than knowledge.
Ooh.
Now, that's a heavy one, isn't it?
Well, it's an awesome one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, there we were sat where the Inklings used to meet to all those wonderful stories that they told in their writings.
Sure.
And across the road is another Inklings club called the Lamb and Flag, by the way, if you can manage that. I feel like an Oxford tourist guide here. But anyway, so that again came now.
There's an old story that C.S. Lewis sent. I think it was a manuscript for Narnia over to J.R. Tolkien, and he didn't like it.
Is it really?
Like, literally told him this is horrible. So those two literary giants had different opinions.
Wow.
On how to write.
Wow.
But,
that's a shock, because one of my favorite books is from Narnia. The was it the Teachings of Narnia or whatever? Is the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Oh yeah, that was great.
One of my other disabilities is that I find it very difficult to read, as I explained earlier, read books without pictures. So, but the fantasy for me is in the pictures, and whatever. So, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is probably one of the only non-tuitional or instruction books that I've ever read, and I read that as a child. But the imagination that kept, but I understand how much I've missed in literature because of my disability, not to have the attention span to sit down and read a book.
Right. That's why you like comic books.
And
they had pictures.
Yeah, and people say, "Have you read this book?" I know, but I've seen the film. Because now they make films about all this stuff.
Makes it a little bit easier. Yep. Good.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Hey, thank you for your time. That was a wonderful conversation. We touched on a lot of topics, and I really appreciate you sharing your life story and who you are and what you're doing.
Part of my life story.
I love it.
Anyway,
so, we're going to end this recording, but I just want to tell you, John, thank you very much. And I do have a gift for you. I'm going to give it to you here in a minute. Thank you for your time today.